Let's talk about Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, since it's black and white theme of the week in Killer Flicks. And that gave me an excuse to rewatch this franchise because the first two I think are absolutely incredible. This is. I know a lot of people think that this movie is dated now, but for me, this movie has never lost its touch. Like, I feel like this is one of the perfect movies. There's a reason why it's considered one of the best films of all time. And it really does show how this movie has stayed over time from since 1960 when this first was made, first was released. That is incredible that you have such a horror movie, but it's not the same as typical horror movies because this is quote unquote one of the first slashers. Even though it's a very small body count, this is technically a slasher, and I don't know if this or Peeping Tom came out first. And if there were slashers before this, they weren't to this extent, to this type of way that this horror movie was interpreted. And I feel like this is one of the pioneers for slashers, definitely. It's like one of the starters, either this or Peeping Tom. And Peeping Tom I haven't actually seen, but I know that that is very similar to Psycho in terms of like being a 60s slasher. And this one, just like I said, it's Alfred Hitchcock's one of his best. And Alfred Hitchcock is one of those directors that no matter what he does, I almost love everything he does, except for a few little ones like Topaz, which I didn't like, but I've seen most of his work, and I really, really think he's one of the best horror directors ever. And like I said, a lot of people might disagree with me because this type of horror is not for everyone, especially in 2018, whenever people are so ADD and everybody has to see killings every like 5 minutes, or see violence, or see sex, or see anything like that. It needs that keeps your attention span really quick. And this one, for a lot of people nowadays, I feel like won't enjoy it as much. I feel like I'm not in the majority of people who would appreciate. Like I love this movie and appreciate it so much, but I feel like I'm not in the majority of the people nowadays how they would think of this movie. And there have been people that I've talked to in real life that say like, "Oh, this is good, but it's slow," and honestly, that kind of hurts me. It really annoys me because this movie is, for me, perfectly paced, so interesting. No matter what, every scene is interesting. Every scene is fascinating. There's two kills in this movie, but whenever they happen, it's incredibly effective and it really works because of the build-up, because of the inevitable scare, but because this is so scarce with killings, it makes it incredibly effective for me. I think it works on such an incredible level, and this is why it's in my top 5 horror movies of all time. Like, this is definitely one of the best. Like I said, I've never lost like any shred of like unliking this movie. I've always loved it ever since I've seen it. And like typical, I'm going to talk about, like, go through the plot and talk about stuff I love and don't love. But in this movie, I love everything, so I'm not going to talk about negatives, really. Well, except for one thing, I guess. But when we get to that, we get to that. But I liked how, and since this is on the Blu-ray, Universal, I liked how it was distributed by Paramount whenever it came out. And I think all of their movies, except for To Catch a Thief, are now owned by Universal, or at least all the Paramount ones. To Catch a Thief, for some reason, the rights have never changed to Universal. I don't know why, but I like that Universal took over this franchise and bought it out, and bought all of Hitchcock's stuff basically, and made a franchise out of it. And the first one, to me, just, like I said, it's perfect. Like, it is almost a completely perfect movie, and I really do think that everything about it is incredible. But like I said, I like how it opens up with a Paramount logo after the Universal logo. I just thought that was funny that companies usually don't do that. But since it was bought out, I guess they did that just because It's technically not Paramount's. They don't get any money for it now, but I thought that was hilarious that it starts with the Universal logo now and then with the Paramount logo. Like, that was a really funny thing I don't see much, especially with those two companies merging. I don't ever see them merge. Um, and just getting it out of the way. Bernard Herrmann's score is one of the most iconic and one of the most incredibly startling, incredibly scary scores I've ever heard. Um, the way that the violins are played in the score, and there's like a scientific like definition on this about how our body and nerves, like our nerves, can be affected by loud screeching noises, and the noises with the violins, like, I feel like if I was there in 1960 whenever this came out, I would have had a heart attack. It's like everybody with the sound effects, with how the movie would be first shown, and you don't see anything like this nowadays, like anything that would desensitize you in terms of violence and all that. If you saw this for the first time, not seeing any type of movie that features really any violence, and this is very scarce with violence, but when it does, I could have seen myself being terrified, like in the theater, if I had never seen anything else before, any other horror at all. Like, this just worked so great on that level. But the score, like I said, the score, Bernard Herrmann's incredible score, it starts out high screeches where the score at the beginning and the credits are great because it makes the film seem ominous, but it has such a quick score build up where the build up in the score is incredible. And it has like low vibes to where it's like, oh, it's gonna be fine, and then it gets really high up in the violins again. Like, it works incredibly with that score, and I really think that it always is, still gets me one of the best scores I've ever heard. But yeah, after the opening credits, it starts in Phoenix, Arizona in December, which I don't get why it's in December though. I mean, well, I guess December, it doesn't always have to be snowy, but like whenever I think of December, I think, oh, it's wintertime. But this literally is not winter at all in the movie, which isn't like a complaint, it's just a thing to point out, like, oh, that's kind of silly. But yeah, it starts in Phoenix, Arizona, where Marion Crane is in this hidden relationship with this guy, Sam Loomis. And Sam Loomis, they just, like on our lunch breaks, they're just going out and having sex, and like she is talking to him, and he says like he divorced like his wife divorced him, and now he's got to pay off all his debts. He has so much money he has to pay off, he won't be able to pay it off ever. Which plays into whenever Marion gets the money, but I like that immediately starts out with this character, Marion, who kind of, I guess in a way, just feels bad for Sam Loomis and wants to help him out. So when she gets the chance, she gets it. But I like that that's a subtle foreshadowing to why it's a better reason why she just took the money. I like that a lot, and I like that scene starting out with them. But then Marion goes back to the office, and there's that Hitchcock cameo outside where he's talking to somebody with a cowboy hat on, which Hitchcock cameos are always apparent in. I don't know if it's every single Hitchcock movie. It might be, but I think it's so hilarious and awesome that he put himself in, I guess, almost every movie that he's ever done. Like, that's really cool. And this one is a more obvious one where, like I said, he's just outside the window whenever Marion Crane walks into the office, just talking to somebody with a cowboy hat on. Like, that wasn't one that was hard to not find. Like, that was a good easy cameo for him to do in this movie. And then Marion, of course, gets the $40,000 in this version. It's $40,000 from her boss's friend, who's going to give the boss that money, the $40,000, and they tell her to go to the bank, and she says she will. Goes home, has a headache. She doesn't really, but like, she goes home and has the money on her bed, like, debating, like, and there's no dialogue either. She's just looking at the money, and I like how the emotions just tell what she's thinking. Like, she literally she's looking at this money really hardly, like, can I get away with this? And I like the fact that even though this is in 1960, like, you can't really always get away with this either, but I feel like it would be easier, I guess, in 1960. Definitely to now, but like I thought that was funny that no dialogue scene is really good of her just walking around in her room, just looking at the money on the bed. I liked her reaction to that, and Janet Leigh just is really good in this movie, and she really, like, I don't know if you should feel sympathy for Marion Crane. Like she does get the talk from Sam Loomis about how he needs the money, but and it seems like you should like her because she's doing a kind thing, like for Sam Loomis, the guy she loves. But then she says later to Norman, like, "Oh, I want to buy an island somewhere," so she is being greedy too. But I liked how this character wasn't. It wasn't completely like you should just completely love her or you shouldn't like her. Like it falls in between where like she made a mistake and she doesn't know what to do with it. She's human, and I liked her details and figuring out what she should do, like as the movie goes along with her. So she takes the money and runs away, and of course sees her boss and that guy who had the money like while at a stopwalk while she's waiting. And I love that. And then I love the scenes where she's driving, and it's so incredibly interesting with no dialogue again, where she is just driving, just point of view of her just on the wheel, just looking at the camera, like looking straight up, like, and then it just has her staring and thinking about it. And then after she, like I said, after she encounters the boss at the walkway, then I love the fact that every time she gets more nervous and encounters somebody like the boss or the cop, she'll have it in her mind where she's thinking like of all the ways that she's going to be caught. And I really think that's interesting. It just adds to the nervousness of the character without her having any dialogue. Like, that's really incredible. And I love those lines where like she's just imagining them saying like, "Yes, officer," like she was supposed to go to the bank, but the bank never heard from her. Like, why would she do that? You should trust her after 10 years. Like, why would she do that to me? Like, I love those lines. Like, that's really, really cool. And I love the driving scenes there, and with the score, just really ups the nervousness of her in the situation, and as the movie goes along, it feels ominous, like there's something else that's going to happen. You just have no idea if you never knew anything about this. Like if you went in clean in 1960, you wouldn't have known what, or even if you didn't read the book, you wouldn't have known like what's going to happen. But all those driving scenes are fantastic. And then she goes to the Bates Motel, where she meets Norman Bates, who Anthony Perkins plays. And Anthony Perkins just, in this movie and in all the Psycho sequels, honestly, like, he's incredible. Like, depending on the quality of each of the sequels, I feel like he still gave it his all in Psycho 1, 2, 3, and 4. Like, he literally, every movie, even if I loved it or thought it was okay, he sells this character. He embodies this character. And I have not read the book Psycho, but I've heard that in the book, the character Norman Bates is supposed to be a fat middle-aged man who I think is described as not good looking. And I like that in this film, and it makes sense with Alfred Hitchcock because he always got good-looking guys and girls in his films. It made sense with Norman, and it also made it a little bit more mysterious with how Norman Bates, like, he looked like a normal person. Like I said, I haven't read the book, but it sounds like with the book, the character, you see this character and you're like, oh, this character looks off. But like Norman Bates, the thing I like is that when she meets him, she doesn't think he's off until he starts talking to her. So I like that he's a normal looking person, and it makes it more interesting in how this character really, it gives a great mystery to it. Again, like I said, like in the book, it just seems like you would immediately suspect, oh, this is a creepy guy. But like, I like that Anthony Perkins is normal looking, and he just it develops on him acting more crazy as the movie goes along. Um, and and I love the fact that Marion Crane comes in and she hears the mother talking to Norman, the mother character, up at the house, and Norman comes down, and he's nice to her, but he's kind of off in a way, but not in a really incredibly creepy way. Just like in a way where it seems like he's like, I don't know what the other word is. Not like he's not complete. Like it makes it seem like he's not completely off. It just makes him seem like he's a strange loner. And Marion Crane, I love the fact that the conversations between them both whenever they both, like, or whenever he makes her the sandwiches and she's eating, like, all that dialogue is incredible, and it's one of the best scenes in the movie where he's talking to her about, like, just about his life, like at first he says, like, you eat like a bird, and then he says, like, he involves the conversation into taxidermy, which is what he does, and that's why all the birds are around. And then I love the fact that he actually kind of gets some info out of her. Like he says, like, "Are you running away from something?" And she kind of just skirts around the question. And I like the fact that when it gets to him talking about his mother, I love the fact that she says, "Well, why don't you, like, stop it? Why don't you, like, leave her?" And then he's like, "My whole life was here. I can't leave this. I can't leave my old mother, because then she'd go to an institution. And have you ever been in one of those places where there would be no place for my mother?" Like, that dialogue, like, he's so incredibly engaging, and it just works incredibly well with the two actors involved as well. And I love the fact that Norman's line where he says, "We all fall into our own traps," which is totally true. And I like the fact that Marion's not, like, being rude to him, but I like the fact that he points out, like, this description about being trapped and dominated, and it really plays into the movie really incredibly well. And I like the fact that Norman just says, after he says, "We're all born in our own traps," I like the fact that he just says, "I was born in mine." And again, that just gives every answer to whenever you realize what this twist is, what is going on. Like, it completely gives everything you need to know with that one line. Like, "I was born into mine." That, just a great line. And it just makes him, so fascinating too with how he talks about his mother in those conversations with Marion Crane. And he said it makes it to where he so angrily resents her, but then he loves her just as much. So it really just builds on how this character interacts with Marion Crane and how he reacts with if she mentions his mother, and how he says he loves her, but then he says he resents her just as much. It's a love-hate thing, but in a way where it's like it messes with his mind, and it just is incredibly well written. Like, the writing in this is incredible. But then, of course, all good things end, because Marion leaves to go, like, to the motel to, like, take a shower. And she walks into the bathroom, and you know what that means? Yep, you're right. You get to see the first toilet ever being flushed in a film. This was the first time that a toilet was flushed in a film. That's funny. I guess now, again, since we're so desensitized by just seeing a toilet, like, I wonder if in 1960 everyone was appalled because a toilet was, I guess, a private thing. Like, it wasn't something that you show. Or at least in 1960, or before 1960, you didn't show a toilet. So I feel like that's funny how that's so much of an issue. But that's fascinating, like, just to see that used to be a thing that people worried about. Like, I really think that's cool. And that's cool. This is the first movie to include a toilet flushing. Or is it just to include a toilet? I don't know. But I love that. And then, of course, shower scene. What can I can't say anything about this that has already been said. Like, this has been said billions of times, like, by millions of people. Just incredible. The score, the violins, piercing noise, the implied violence. You don't actually see anything really. You just see the knife going down. You see her screaming. You see her moving around, and that's it. And it just works so incredibly well. It holds up incredibly. It's never lost its steam. And this follows a rule that Halloween 1978 will follow, where not showing the violence makes it more scary. And I think that this is effective, because there are a lot of movies nowadays where it show so much violence it just isn't effective. It doesn't work for me. It even though I like violence in horror movies, like fun ones, but in this it just is perfect because it doesn't show that. It's implied. And it just makes the fear even bigger, even though you don't see anything. It's more your imagination, which I just think is really cool. Just regarded as one of the best scenes ever, like one of the most iconic scenes ever, the shower scene. And then, of course, she, like I said, she dies, but it's funny that this is only 48 minutes into the movie, and I checked the timer thing on the Blu-ray whenever I was watching it, and this would have been, if this came out in 1960, this would have been just, again, a giant surprise, because in 1960, I don't think they ever really had a movie where they had a big star like Janet Leigh, then killed her off halfway through the movie, and had a new group of characters. And of course, we are like there's so many movies, so many horror movies that do this, like Scream, Valentine, like Friday the 13th, like all of these movies have the opening kill, which is similar to this one. It's not, I mean, this one's different because it's like halfway through the movie, but after this movie, so almost every, like, a majority of the horror movies I've seen that are slashers do this. Main character dies at the beginning, or not, or just one character is introduced, dies in the beginning of the movie, and it's not as long as this one, but I feel like this started that trend completely, and that's just, it gets tiring in some horror movies, but some horror movies it works, but I just thought it was so incredibly ballsy to do that for the first time in this movie in the 60s. And then that zoom in on her face whenever she died is really creepy. Like, you just see, like, this great camera shot where it shows her eye. It does a spinning camera out of her eye, and then it goes up in the bathroom, moves around, goes outside, goes to the money on the, drawer. And again, like, the camera work is incredible in this too, and that's an incredible shot where it goes from her eye to the bathroom, to outside the bathroom, to the bedroom, to the drawer where the money is. Like, that just, like, Alfred Hitchcock is a master at all these things, and there are so many camera shots in this that I just gawk over because they're just so incredible just watching them. And then there's a great tease where it's like you don't know about the mother yet, but you get right after she dies, just up in the Bates house, you just hear Norman go, "Mother, mother, blood, blood," and then he goes and cleans it up. So it does a fantastic job of not knowing, did the mother do this? And it just has a great double meaning to it. Whenever the twist is revealed, it makes total sense, but it's a cool double meaning to him and his mother. And then he puts her in a car and puts the car in the lagoon, and that's how he gets rid of the bodies in this. And then it has our new set of characters, which I enjoy just as much. Lila Crane, I guess Sam Loomis isn't the new character, he was at the beginning of the movie, but Lila Crane is the new character after Marion Crane died. And Sam Loomis, she goes to Sam Loomis, determined to find her sister because she doesn't know where she is. It's been a couple days. So Sam Loomis goes with her to try to figure out where she could have gone, and they realize that she took all that money. And then while they're talking for the first time, Abergast, this private detective, he is just creepily staring at them outside, which I thought was pretty funny. But then Arbogast talks to Sam and Lila about it, and then he decides to go find out where Norman is too. So he goes, investigates all around town, then finds the Bates Motel. He goes a couple times to Norman, and then this is where the second kill is, and I think this is the scarier kill of the two. I don't care. I think this is the scarier kill because Arbogast goes in there, and then he follows Norman inside, and he thinks his mother's in there. He goes in, and there's this incredible camera shot where he's walking up the stairs, then it goes tilt all the way up to the ceiling where it's pointing down at the floor. So it's Arbogast walking up the stairs. Then that piercing is perfectly timing, that piercing violin sound. And you see Mother walking out of the bedroom, puts with the knife. He gets like 2 cuts in the face, then does the falling down the stairs, which is kind of cheesy now, but the moment that musical score happens, like, it is incredibly, always scares me. Like, it's just that effective. But then it's just kind of silly when he goes down the stairs. I mean, it's not bad, but it's one of those things where, like, it's definitely, he's not falling down the stairs. It's definitely a background just put there, just like whenever she's driving. Like, somebody's not actually back there driving. Like, she's not actually driving out there. It's just video behind them. Which isn't terrible. It was from 1960, so... But it was just a funny thing to make note of. But yeah, Lila and Sam go back to the Bates Motel, and they encounter Norman, and I like the fact that it builds on Norman again, just how he is so, like, they know something's up with him. They know that there's something, like, Marion's was there, where could she be? So they go there and find out if Arbogast won't come back. So Arbogast is gone too. And they go there, and Sam distracts Norman, and then Lila goes into the house. She goes upstairs, finds the mother's room. It looks like the bed has been sat on, like somebody's been laying there. And Norman did take his mother down earlier in the movie to the fruit cellar. She goes up there, finds the mother's room, then Norman realizes what they're doing and knocks out Sam for a second, runs to the house. Lila runs downstairs into the fruit cellar. And this is just an incredible, like, reveal. Like, even though I knew it before I saw the movie, and even though I have seen it many, many times, it always works. Every time Lila goes downstairs into the fruit cellar, she says, "Mrs. Loomis," like, she wants to talk to Mrs. Loomis because she might know where Marion is. She turns Mrs. Loomis sitting in the chair around, and it's a skeleton. Like, she's been dead for, what was it, 12 years? And that shot of Lila screaming, and then you see Norman run down the stairs with his mother's clothes on with a knife and screams, "I am Norma Bates," and then Sam, like, tackles him. And that reveal just in a couple seconds, you know everything that the movie is about, and you know the whole twist. But it just built up incredibly well to it. And then you get the weird scene where, like, this guy is talking to everybody about Norman and what he did, which made me feel stupid that you needed to explain that. But I guess it was 1960, so maybe they just didn't. I don't know why they did that in 1960. It was just a weird explanation scene at the end with that guy just explaining, oh, Norman took the psyche of his mother. He killed and he imagined that he was part of her. Like, they were, like, it was a split personality. Like, it was just dumb that they explained it. But Marion and the money and Arbogast are gone, so I thought it was interesting that Norman is, like, kept in a room, and the guy gives Norman a blanket, and he speaks in his mother's voice. And then this is one of the famous last lines in any movie ever, where Norman is sitting there in his mother's voice, wearing the blanket, saying, like, that nobody would believe that your dear mother would have done all those murders. And then, like, you see the fly land on his hand, and of course the line, like, why she wouldn't even hurt a fly. Like, and then it ends, but it ends in this incredible, one of the coolest shots ever, where Norman is smiling, but then it turns to the mother skeleton right as the car in the swamp is getting pulled out by a chain. So I think it said online that people think that it implies that him and his mother are one now. His mother's like his split personality of his mother, like they are one now because the chain connecting the car is like they're connected. Like I thought that was a really cool explanation. But but yeah, this one just like I said, that's all I can really say about this one because this is really incredibly simple, but it is incredibly well done. One of the best horror movies ever. It has always stayed with me. It's always been a horrifying movie with two kills in it but the tension is so great and the characters are so well written and so interesting. The acting is fantastic from everybody involved. It just is truly one of the perfect horror movies and in my top 5, of course. So I just love this movie, and I wanted to point out too, just to point it out, look at the steelbook. Isn't that cool? And then we all go a little mad sometimes. Oh, I didn't mention that line either. That's a great line in the movie. Of course, that's a line that everybody knows too, but yeah, of course, this one's just incredible. There's not much else I can say about it that hasn't been said before, so I can't wait to talk about the sequels, especially Psycho 2, which is one of my favorite horror sequels ever. So, thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more.